And now on the line is Francesca Holt, who was in Gaza last year with MSF. Francesca, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Okay, Francesca, could you tell us about your work background and about your work in general with MSF?
Yeah, well, I'm a consultant paediatric anaesthetist, and I work in Dublin in one of the children's hospitals. But I have been on 3 missions with Médecins sans Frontières. So I've worked in Nigeria, in Syria, and in Gaza as an anaesthetist and as an intensive care doctor and a pain physician. So my last mission over the summer was in Gaza, and I returned from Gaza in July.
Okay, and how did you get involved with MSF?
Well, I've always wanted to work in the humanitarian field, so I finished my training so that I could be really as useful as I could be in those situations. And I called the Dublin offices of MSF, and they matched me with a mission within 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks of meeting MSF, I was in Nigeria.
All right. And before we talk more about Gaza, I understand you were in Gaza last year with MSF. Can you tell us a bit about the 2 other countries you were in with MSF first, Nigeria and the other place? Where is it again?
Syria.
Okay.
Syria.
Oh, I'd say Syria was tough, was it?
Yeah, it was, but it was also one of the greatest privileges of my life to have been in Syria. Not many people have been there and know inside what it's like, and I was basically doing war surgery as the anaesthetist and in the intensive care unit. So we saw 50% of our patients were burns victims because people cook with petrol in the camps that explodes. And then from the war, I had patients in airstrikes or who had gunshot injuries. And then because during war life still goes on, we had a lot of births and obstetric care to deliver. But
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and how long were you in Syria for?
6 weeks.
God. And how did you go in Nigeria?
In Nigeria, I was doing facial reconstruction for a disease called noma, which is a facial gangrene, and it primarily affects children. 140,000 children each year get noma, and if it's not treated, it's a 90% mortality within 2 weeks. So what MSF does is support a really special hospital called the Sokoto Noma Children's Hospital, the only dedicated noma hospital in the world, and provides support for facial reconstruction with this really destructive disease that is a disease of poverty because it's related to malnutrition, and it was last seen in Europe in the concentration camps. So that was a specialized surgical project where as an anaesthetist it's kind of a difficult airway project, and we were reconstructing mainly children's faces because of this disease.
I've never heard of that disease. I'm surprised I haven't heard of it. And how long were you in Nigeria for? 6 weeks as well, was it?
No, just 3 weeks.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was talking to Tom from MSF Ireland there recently, and he put me in touch with you. He told me you were in Gaza last year, and you even wrote an article in the Irish Independent about your experience over there. Could you just tell us how you got on in Gaza, how you found working over there?
Yeah. Well, Gaza is one of the Palestinian occupied territories. So it's a small area on the coast. It's 9 by 41 kilometers, and there's 2 million people inside Gaza. It's really hard to get in and out. It's been blocked in for the last over 10 years. And every Friday since March 2018, when the Palestinians started protesting against this blockade, young Palestinian, mainly boys and men, are shot at the border where they're protesting. And 90% of those injuries are to the lower limb. So I was there as an anaesthetist working on an orthopedic and plastic project reconstructing these boys' limbs. So that's what my day job was like. In Gaza itself, I had some freedom. I had more freedom than I had in Syria, because once you're inside Gaza, it's quite safe for me to walk around unless there are missiles or airstrikes that MSF would probably know about, in which case we have a safe room. But in general, I was able to go around and go to restaurants and to the beach, and the Palestinians were just so kind. They beeped the horn as I was walking down the street to say hello and thank you so much for coming to Gaza. They brought me presents, and
Cool.
they were really lovely.
And I presume, or I assume, that there are big kind of aspects of your work in Gaza and in Syria that are scary, kind of moments that are scary, are there?
In Syria, I wasn't allowed out. In Syria, the journey was probably the most dangerous part. We had to swap vehicles so that the registration plate wasn't in the wrong town. But once I reached the hospital where I was working, I was in the compound, and I didn't leave for 6 weeks. And you kind of get used to your own environment, and so I guess you feel a bit safer. And then in Gaza, I really didn't feel unsafe. And MSF has really good communication with the military on both sides. And so in general, we would know if something was going to happen. And MSF are constantly, in any situation where they work, they're constantly tracking information to see if something's about to erupt. And for the safety of their staff and for the people that we're looking after. So we would go into the safe room or evacuate if that was needed.
And how is it that you ended up writing an article for the Irish Independent about your experience in Gaza?
Well, MSF was set up by doctors and by journalists in 1971 after the Biafran famine. The journalists and doctors that were working there felt that speaking out against atrocities was as important as the medical care that we give. So part of MSF's mandate is to speak out. And so I was MSF asked me just to give a bit of an insight into my experiences there. And that was written in the Independent.
I know you're not obviously a politician, but what do you think is needed to fix the situation in Gaza, Francesca?
It's a bit of a tricky. I am a medic, and also I'm representing MSF that are impartial and neutral and independent, and that's how we're able to be one of the main humanitarian organisations that gets into conflict situations without taking sides. But my article is about young Palestinians that are shot every Friday, and I think that the answer to shooting people is obvious. But I couldn't really say. It's been a long conflict. And the blockade in Gaza has been over 10 years, and before that the situation was very bad as well. So it's been a long time.
And I know you have an English accent, you're English, but you live in Ireland, don't you?
Yeah, I live and work in Dublin, yeah.
Alright, you work in Dublin Hospital, I presume, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, in Crumlin, yeah.
Alright, cool. Okay, Francesca, do you have any more plans maybe with MSF in the future?
Yeah, I'd love to continue working with MSF. They're an amazing organisation, and although I haven't been, I was working in Canada last year, so I couldn't be on the field. I still was able to do research with MSF. Now I'm on the radio and writing in the newspapers, but I'd hope to go back to the field. It's something that definitely gets under your skin.